In 12th century India, the caste system dictated exactly what kind of life you were allowed to live. A rigid social hierarchy crushed the working class under endless physical labor, while the entirety of the region's wealth flowed in only one direction, upward, into the hands of the elite. To make matters worse, the working poor were carrying the weight of the mendicant culture. Popular ascetic traditions encouraged tens of thousands of monks to completely abandon physical labor and wander the country begging for alms. This created a massive, non-producing population that drained the already exhausted working class. Daasoha held the office of Bandari, the finance minister for the Kalachuri Empire. His daily responsibilities involved managing the state treasury, auditing resource allocation, and tracking the empire's total fiscal health from a position of administrative authority. From his desk in the treasury, Daasoha observed that spiritual discourse did nothing to address a starving population. He recognized that the empire's structural inequality was a systemic economic failure, requiring a reform of how resources were generated and mobilized at the state level. Daasoha's solution was to establish the Anubhava Mantapa in the city of Kalyana. Long before modern democratic assemblies, this was a spiritual parliament designed specifically to crowdsource solutions to the society's deep economic divides. Inside this hall, the rigid laws of the outside world were suspended. Elite Sanskrit scholars sat shoulder to shoulder with day laborers, cobblers, and weavers. They participated in open debates as absolute equals. Together, this diverse parliament diagnosed a specific psychological problem at the root of their economic crisis. The urge to hoard wealth, the creation of social classes, and the exploitation of labor all stemmed from a single source, the human ego, or aham. The Sharanas argued that if a donor gives specifically to earn afterlife merit or social status, the act preserves the giver's sense of superiority. Without removing the I from the equation, the act of giving simply replaces a financial hierarchy with a hierarchy of power. At the time, the dominant Vedic and Shaivite philosophies focused heavily on individual spiritual enlightenment. They used mantras like Soham, meaning I am he or I am God, and Shivoham, meaning I am Shiva. The parliament, known as the Sharanas, critiqued these concepts. They argued that standing apart from society and declaring yourself to be God harbors a subtle internal form of spiritual arrogance. To counter this, they engineered a linguistic shift. Combining the word dasa, meaning servant, with aham, meaning I am, created dasoham, I am a servant. But they didn't stop there. They dropped the aham, the I, entirely. The word became Daasoha, pure egolessness. Daasoha rewires human identity. It shifts the ultimate purpose of life away from achieving personal divinity in isolation. Instead, your highest spiritual calling is to become a selfless instrument for the welfare of the entire community. This was a direct challenge to the orthodox practice of dana, or charity. Religious texts of the time mandated 16 specific types of gifts a wealthy person should give, ranging from food to land. The Sharanas pointed out the psychological tension built into traditional charity. The person giving usually expects a karmic reward, while the person receiving is burdened with an unspoken debt, trapped in a position of inferiority. Daasoha flips those mechanics. Under this system, the receiver is revered as a manifestation of the divine. The giver recognizes they own nothing. They are merely a conduit, returning nature's wealth back to the community where it belongs. Traditional charity requires a hierarchy of power to exist. Someone must be rich enough to give, and someone poor enough to need it. Daasoha actively destroys that hierarchy, demanding that the giver and receiver meet as absolute equals. To pull this philosophy out of the meeting hall and inject it into the real economy, the Sharanas established 3 strict practical pillars. This interlocking cycle starts with Pillar 1, Kayaka, or production. Everyone must perform physical labor and maintain self-reliance. The second pillar is Daasoha, distribution. Wealth cannot be hoarded, it must be immediately shared. Pillar 3 is Arivu, achieving spiritual awakening through these social contributions. They designed a system that integrated the need for physical survival, the mechanics of social equity, and the pursuit of mental well-being into one cohesive lifestyle. In 12th century Kalyana, they applied this through 3 specific channels. Ana, interdining that shattered caste boundaries. Akshara, freely sharing education with the working class, and Arivu, spreading spiritual awareness to everyone. If you look at this portrait of Karl Marx, you see a philosophy striving for a classless society. 700 years before Marx published his theories, the Sharamas were running a society built on wealth redistribution. However, Marxism relies on the state forcibly seizing the means of production and wealth from the elite, which necessitates a violent class struggle to overturn the existing order. The Sharanas achieved a similar distribution of wealth through the internal mandate of Kayaka and Daasoha. By making labor a spiritual duty and hoarding a social sin, they replaced the state's use of force with an individual's voluntary commitment to the community. Daasoha stands as a uniquely Indian, non-violent alternative to modern socialism. It addresses economic disparity through a transformation of the human conscience rather than state violence. Today, this 12th century Sharana blueprint serves as the logistical framework for modern institutions tackling systemic poverty across Karnataka. Take the Siddhaganga Mutt in Tumkur. Its late leader, Dr. Shiva Kumara Swamiji, spent his life as a modern practitioner of the threefold Daasoha. In this archival image, you get a sense of the scale of their daily labor. Through Anna Daasoha, these kitchens operate relentlessly, cooking for and feeding thousands of impoverished children every single day. Notice the layout of the dining hall. Thousands of people sit together in equal rows. In this space, the 12th century ideal holds true. All boundaries of caste, religion, and economic class are actively erased. The Sharanas proved that true salvation isn't a reward waiting for us in the afterlife. It is the egoless, continuous act of building a compassionate, equitable society right here on Earth.